I'm going to show you a really quick and easy, super simple way of getting these loose impressionistic tree trunks in. Super easy to do. We're going to be just using 3 colors. I'm going to be using this Liquitex Basics Ivory Black, and I really encourage you. Ivory black is a softer black. It's sort of a charcoal. If you just have pure black, that's fine, but I encourage you to try this ivory black. And even though it says it's opaque, that is not my experience with this. This has, to me, a bit of a transparency. Maybe that's because it's not a heavy body. I'm also going to be using burnt umber, which is a heavy body, and I'm going to be using titanium white, which is a heavy body. And you've probably often, if you've watched many of my videos, you've heard me talk about Rosemary Co classic long flat brushes. I like these brushes because they have I call it sort of a ruffled end to it. It's not smooth like a lot of brushes are. It doesn't have a chiseled edge. It's just got a real roughness. The particular brush that I used to do these trees, as you can see, it is well worn, well loved. It looks a little bit like it's been gnawed on, but it's that great texture that's going to help get the texture in the trunk. So you don't want to be trying to do this with a real smooth brush. Doesn't have to be this brush, but see if you can find something that's kind of worn. I'm using an all-purpose medium paper to do these on. You can do this on canvas or anything that you would like. So I'm going to put my 3 colors out, and I really encourage you, one of the tricks of this is using a mixture of all 3 colors. You're never gonna, we tend to think of a tree trunk as being brown. They're really not brown. Most of them are more charcoal. Most of them have a mixture of colors from top to bottom. So that's what we're gonna try to do. So let me get my worn, loved brush. And I'm just going to take this brown, or I'm sorry, the black, a little bit of that brown, tiny bit of white, but mainly dark, and I'm just going to draw in some trees. I'm going to do them loose. I'm not doing them up and down, straight up and down, because we're not painting telephone poles, we're painting trees, so they're going to have some angle and some character to them. But I'm just going to try to get this outline. You could have a little bit of bump here and there. The bottom of it needs to flare out a little bit. So what I'm going to do first is go in with my darker mixture, and I'm going to do all of this wet on wet. I'm not going to let the layers dry in between. I'm going to do this fairly quickly. My brush is damp. It's not dripping wet, but it's not dry by any means. So I'm taking my black, I'm taking a little bit of the brown, mainly the black. The brown is just sort of softening that, and I'm going to use this brush vertically. I'm going to turn it, and I'm going to get some expressive strokes with this. I'm not painting a wall. I'm not trying to get a single color. I'm going to vary it. There's some places where I'm going to put some intentional dark spots. And I'm not doing long strokes. I'm doing short, up and down, choppy strokes. And it's those strokes that are, and I'm not worrying about trying to get a super straight edge, because that's going to give you that feeling of bark. Now, the farther back your tree is, the more smooth it's going to be, because the less obvious the bark is going to be. So you have to just keep that in mind. Like I say, this is going to be super simple. I'm going to do it super fast. I'm not overthinking it. And I'm going to decide where my light source is coming from. So if my light source is coming from the right, the left side of the tree is going to be a little darker. So I'm going to add just some pure black back into this left side. And again, I have a couple of places where there's just a knot. Maybe down at the bottom you want to have just some black. Be sure and do something interesting at the bottom, okay? So there we have it. Looks very rough. The only thing I'm going to do different now is I'm going to moisten my brush. I'm going to add some titanium white into this same mixture. You may not want to use the brown. To me, the brown warms it up a little bit. So again, I'm taking my brush, I'm holding it very loosely between my forefinger and my thumb, and I'm going to start doing these sort of choppy motions. I am not trying to cover up everything that's beneath. So I'm picking my brush up, I'm skipping it. So it's not covering everything, and I'm putting very, very little pressure on this, very little pressure. I'm turning my brush, I'm getting varied strokes with it. I'm not doing the same stroke. I'm letting that brush roll between my fingers and turn over. I'm varying the amount of pressure. And as I go further back, there would be less white. So I'm going to go back in and add some brown and black to that same mixture. And it's just slightly darker. And again, I'm just not overthinking it. On this back edge, I might want to go a little darker. So at this point, you've got a rough idea of a tree. On these other ones, I went back with my white, so let me do that. I'm going to lighten this just a little bit more. And there were some spots where I let that outside edge, maybe out where something's protruding out, where that's just going to catch that a little bit. I came in just a couple of spots, let it catch that outside edge. Then I also went back to just my black, which is actually, like I say, it's a charcoal. It's not really a black. And I just very, very lightly, I am barely touching that. Think if you were petting a baby bird, how lightly you would be touching something. That's what I'm doing at this point, where I'm just dropping back in, I'm rolling my brush, and I'm just dropping back in some loose marks, not overthinking it. If it gets too dark in an area, you can go back in and just add some white. Here I've got just a solid little puddle of all black. That's fine. I like that. The rougher you get it, the more textured your tree is going to look. So I don't mind it having some roughness to it. And there you go. You've got just a super start. All right, on this tree, I made it slightly more brown than that one. So let's try that. Let's do another one. And I'm going to shift it just slightly warmer. But I'm going to start with this same principle of, I'm going to get that outside. I'm going to do a little branch. Remember to get it a little wider at the bottom, do something interesting at the bottom. So I'm just using a little more of the burnt umber, and again, so you can see that base is going to be warmer than this one. I'm not worried about smooth lines. I'm just really roughly putting in some little choppy strokes. So that's a bit of a bump. But, you know, I don't even mind that. Typically, it's going to get darker at the bottom because you're going to have less light down at the bottom. Remember your light source again. I'm going to intentionally make this look a little gnarlier since I've got that big gnarl on the other side. And see, I like these bumps and bulges. I think that's great. So now we're just going to go back to this same mixture, which is more brown than black. I'm just adding some white. I'm going to wet my brush again. And again, I'm being mindful the light source is over here, and I'm just barely letting my brush touch that canvas. And because the paint is still, it's not real wet, but it's definitely damp underneath, it's blending into the layer below a little bit. I'm going to get a little darker back over here. I still like, even with the brown tree, going back in with more predominantly black, get some knot holes. I really like the knot holes. Put those in first and then let the tree bark come over top of that. I think that looks a little more effective, but I'm just going to lightly skim this again. Don't be afraid to leave some places really dark. I got this a little too wide here. That's wider than this, so I might see if I can fix that a little bit. Again, I've just got the little lighter mixture. Keeping those brush strokes real irregular. Don't overthink it. If you had these trees on your canvas and they were set back in the canvas, it would look just as real as could be. I'm going to quickly drop in some green foliage in the background just to give you a feel. I think it helps the trees look a little more natural. I'm going to put one more smaller tree in the background. And because it's in the background, I'm going to have it starting back here. I'm going to have it look a little smoother. And remember, trees, they grow at an angle. They're very seldom are they just straight up and down. So this one's going to be a little smoother. Because it's more in the distance, you're not going to see the texture as heavily as you would in the foreground. But you'll still see it. Okay. All right, let me drop in a little green background and then I'll let you take a look. So I'm looking at, before I even move on, I'm looking at this original one and I like, there's just a little more texture. I'm going back into my white and I'm just going to add just a little more place of interest here on the side. Not much. I think that's, if you get it too light, just add some dark back in. I think that's nice. Okay. So here we have our little forest of trees. I like these little dark spots. I like having these little knot holes, having one side of the tree darker than the other, some real strong dark spots, some stronger light spots, and you know, in your painting this will just look like a rough textured tree. Very easy. Hope you'll give it a try. Hey, I'd love for you to check out my website. There are all kinds of fun things there and some free stuff. And I also have very inexpensively priced courses and shorter tutorials. And you can check out the paintings that I have that are available for sale. 25% of my painting sales goes to fund water wells through Hydrating Humanity. I'll put a link in the description box below. And if this video was of benefit to you, I would appreciate a thumbs up. And if you'll hit subscribe, you'll make sure you won't miss the next video that's coming out soon. Thanks so much. God bless.